Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
There are signs tonight that council taxes in England may go up temporarily to pay for a huge shortfall in funding for the care of the elderly and disabled. There's a projected deficit in the care budget of more than £2.5 billion by 2020. Ministers accept the system is under strain and they have already been speaking to councils about how they can raise more revenue. BBC News has been told that David Cameron was considering the idea of a cross-party commission to look at the issue. Here's our political editor, Laura Koonsberg.
She's in no hurry to reveal how the government plans to cope with care. But Number 10 cannot escape from the urgency. The pressures of how we pay as a country to look after our old.
Hello.
There was no mention of social care in the mini budget just weeks ago. But on Thursday, ministers will announce that councils can raise extra cash.
Minister David Mowat.
The spending on long-term care in our country is more than the OECD average. In particular, it is more than comparable economies such as France and Germany. Nevertheless, I accept, Mr. Speaker, that our system is under strain.
Councils in England are already able to charge an extra 2% on council tax for care. Ministers will allow them to charge a little more, increasing the precept, as it's known. But of course, council tax is based on property values. And with more and more demands for care and smaller overall council budgets, the formula is tight, to say the least.
The concern that we would have in the Local Government Association is that we create a postcode lottery in your area on whether you're actually in an area that does raise it or has the ability to raise a reasonably good amount.
With shortages in social care putting historic pressure on hospitals, David Cameron, when Prime Minister, was hunting for a long-term solution.
This is an issue that has been ducked by all political parties, really, because the consequences are awful, but the means of solving it are difficult. And it's why I've called for the government to lead an approach, bringing all parties together, setting up a cross-party commission.
David Cameron's team was interested in the idea.
They were. We went in and talked to them. We presented them with a paper, and then the whole run-up to the referendum took over, and we never got any response from that. And then, of course, there's been a change of government.
So you know that David Cameron's team was considering this. What would you say to Theresa May's team?
Engage, talk to us now. There is an urgency about this.
Behind closed doors, plenty of politicians worry the current system can't last without some major changes. But it's almost been sacrilege for anyone in the government to say that in public. That's why there is some sympathy among ministers for the idea of a commission, to take the politics out of it and allow them to concentrate on making big decisions. But that's not the only option that ministers will consider, and none of them is straightforward.
The government can make choices about the money it spends. So far, it's chosen to ignore some of the most elderly and some of the most vulnerable people in society. It's quite disgraceful, but this week is an opportunity for the government to change tack on that and give social care the funding it needs.
On Thursday, ministers will explain how councils in England will be able to raise a little more to spend a little more. But a permanent solution for how we care for our elderly with dignity, that's a long way off. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
So as we've heard, everyone, ministers included, agrees the social care system in England faces challenges. For one thing, the number of people over the age of 65 has risen by 1 million since 2010. Social care includes the cost of looking after people in residential and nursing homes. It also covers the cost of providing help at home for tasks like washing, dressing and eating. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, has been at a care home in London.
76, 7 and 3.
Bingo this afternoon at a residential home. One example of social care.
Number 48, 48.
It's a vital public service, but unlike the NHS, much of it is funded by local authorities, with money from the council tax and central government. It also
46.
includes care in the home.
Number 46.
After funding cuts, there are warnings that care is at a tipping point.
Local authorities who buy the majority of care are having smaller and smaller budgets to cope with increasing demand. It's a real recipe for a nightmare.
English local authorities have cut spending on care for older people by 9% over 5 years from 2009. That's meant 400,000 fewer pensioners getting funding for care. There are predictions of a £2.3 billion gap between projected demand for care and current government spending plans by 2020. Funding cuts have meant that local authorities have tended to reduce the fees they pay care providers on behalf of those who qualify for support. Some have pulled out of the market. This one is financially secure, though it says an increasing proportion of its residents are paying for their own care. Here they believe that higher council tax increases for social care would help, but more money from central government is needed to tackle serious underlying problems.
It is short-term tinkering with a system which is fundamentally broken. The system needs to be reviewed and properly considered, rather than just knee-jerk reactions which won't really make any ongoing difference to a very precarious sector.
Social care cuts are causing increasing problems for the NHS. Elderly patients can be stuck in hospital because continuing care can't be arranged at home or in their local communities.
Underfunding social care is inefficient. It's a false economy, because if people don't get the essential care and support they need, they will end up in more expensive parts of the system, like hospitals. It will impose a big human cost on families and carers.
There haven't been such big social care cuts in Scotland and Wales as in England. Northern Ireland and Scotland have integrated health and social care. There have been calls in England for the two to be put together. But across the UK, the pressures are the same: an ageing population with increasingly complex care needs. Hugh Pym, BBC News.